This game just bridged so many of the things I love in genre storytelling. It was like someone threw Twin Peaks, a bunch of Stephen King books, and John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness into a blender and then morphed that into a video game. It's just a lot of things I love rolled into one. Now, sure, this game is definitely a lot of walking around in the woods, and that can maybe get boring, I guess, if you're a dork. Today, instead of talking about movies and me ranting about how they're all too long, I thought we'd take a break and talk about something that I got really into in 2024, video games. I was never much of a gamer growing up. Sure, I played GoldenEye and Mario Party and Halo and Guitar Hero and all the games that 99% of millennials have played at some point in their lives. But I never dove into any story-based games or online multiplayer games at all. In fact, until spring of 2024, I hadn't even owned a video game console since 2008. So it's safe to say that my experience with gaming was limited, which is kind of weird. For context, most of my best friends are so into gaming that they own multiple consoles, and I've had multiple friends work at GameStop over the years. Gaming has always been around me, but it was just something that I never cared too much about. I was always more interested in movies and TV as far as storytelling goes. But then last spring I got a new job that required me to be knowledgeable about a few different games that my employer had developed. So about a month into the job, I finally pulled the trigger and bought my first video game console in over 15 years. The Nintendo Switch. That night, my wife and I played Mario Kart for like 8 hours straight. I mean, we were just having the best time with it. And as the next couple weeks went on, we bought a few more games to play together, and then I bought a few games to play by myself, and before you know it, at the end of 2024, I'd finished like 15 different video games. And like I said, I was never much of a gamer. I finished more games in 2024 than I'd ever finished in my entire life up to that point. So with that in mind, I thought I'd do a quick little video talking about my experience diving into video games as a man in his 30s who's obsessed with movies and really storytelling in general. So with that out of the way, I'm Brandon, and this is Born to Rant. Okay, so I guess it would be kind of hard to talk about getting into gaming without telling you all what I actually played. So I'm just going to have a quick list of all the games I finished, scrolling in alphabetical order, and then in a bit I'll rank my top 5 favorite games that I have finished so far. Okay, so before I dive into my top 5, here's what I liked about getting into gaming. The stories. Honestly, I knew there were a lot of games out there that had fantastic stories. I mean, my friends have been telling me this for years, but I just didn't really have much of an interest all the same. That being said, I was really impressed with how immersive some of these stories were. I mean, it's no surprise that Allan Wake literally hooked me in like a TV show does, because that's literally its format. It honestly just has made me more excited to dive into gaming more in 2025. I'm hoping by the end of the year I'll be able to justify getting a PS5, and then I'll be able to dive into even more classic games that I'm dying to play, like The Last of Us, those Spider-Man games, Allan Wake 2, the Final Fantasy VII remake, and I could keep going on and on. And one thing that I noticed is that the writing in all of these games is fairly strong. Even some of the goofier moments I think work in the context of the game. Like this moment from Final Fantasy X did make me laugh out loud, but in the context of the story, I understand why this scene is there. The gameplay. Obviously, it would be hard to keep playing games if I didn't enjoy playing them beyond watching the cutscenes. And for me, there were really 2 games that stood out as far as gameplay is concerned, and that was Final Fantasy X and Batman Arkham City. As far as Final Fantasy X goes, there's just something about a turn-based boss battle that I find really satisfying. Planning out your long-term strategy and using your limit break at the right moment to make sure you're taking down the boss at the right times. At the same time, I really loved the detective mode in Arkham City, and I loved it in Arkham Asylum as well, but I think they just really leveled it up for City. It's just so satisfying the way the map can change with the click of a button and having new items present themselves to you that you missed before. Strategy guides. One thing that I think really held me back from getting into gaming as a kid was not having easy access to strategy guides. Oftentimes I'd get stuck on a part of a game, not be able to figure it out, and just give up. I just simply did not have the patience to spend hours trying to figure out what I was supposed to do next. Especially when there was a stack of movies I could be watching instead that required zero effort from me. All that to say that being able to just look up every strategy guide ever made on my phone in real time while I'm playing, I don't think I would have been able to finish a single Final Fantasy game without them, especially the Cloister of Trials in 10, and really just the massive world of 7. I would have been completely lost without the strategy guides. And I guess maybe this is kind of a controversial take in the gaming world, but I don't want to be so frustrated while playing a game that I want to unalive myself. And most I want to say motherfucker somewhat aggressively when I die. I just want to enjoy myself. My life is stressful enough. I don't need to also play games on hard mode. To be honest, I'm still a little petrified of online gaming though, for a number of reasons, like the obvious of people just being absolute pieces of shit when playing games, but also I don't really like competitive games or big multiplayer brawls. That shit is boring to me. I don't know though, maybe I should make it a goal to really give it a try this year. What do you guys think? Should I try playing Fortnite? I've had it downloaded for months, but have only opened it once. What are some other Switch games I could try playing online with friends? Okay, let's dive into my 5 favorite games that I finished in 2024. Number 5, Final Fantasy XII. Now, this is probably controversial considering I also finished Final Fantasy VII in 2024, but look folks, I'm just gonna say it. Older graphics hold games back a bit in 2024. It's not the game's fault, but ultimately, I just had more fun playing 12 than I did 7, and I'm sorry. I thought the story for Final Fantasy 12 was fairly strong. I really liked how much it was obviously inspired by Star Wars. I mean, Balthier is quite literally just Han Solo, but make him British. I thought Vaughn was a pretty strong protagonist, and definitely a little less annoying than some of the protagonists in other Final Fantasy games. The opening sequence to Final Fantasy XII is also so cool and epic and overwhelming, and it really felt like I was diving headfirst into a movie or TV show. Like, I remember feeling so overwhelmed for the first 5 or so hours I spent playing this game. Between the huge exposition dumps and the completely new gameplay system, it took me a little bit to get used to, but once I did, I had a really great time with Final Fantasy XII. So when a friend was describing the battle system for this game, I could not have been less interested. Pre-programming your characters to battle, it sounds so fucking boring to me. But once I finally dove in and understood how the Gambit system worked, I had a great time with this game. It was fun moving the order of operations around and experimenting with various moves and characters. I also loved the ability to play through at double or even quadruple speed. At first, I thought it really ruined the aesthetics of the game, but within an hour, I was so used to it that I could not go back. I ended up sinking about 80 hours into Final Fantasy XII, so it's safe to say that I enjoyed this game. And being able to play at a higher speed sure made grinding levels much easier, and I'm sure, again, someone will be mad that I did this, but there were times where I'd go and level up each of my characters 10 or even 20 levels in one go, and it would only take me 20 to 30 minutes to do that. So I give Final Fantasy XII a 4 out of 5. Number 4, Batman Arkham Asylum. I'm a big Batman fan. I even have a Court of Owls tattoo. So my friends have been trying to get me to play the Arkham games since Arkham Asylum was first released. But like I said earlier, I just had no interest in gaming, especially when I could just go watch The Dark Knight or read any number of Batman comics that, again, required no effort from me. That being said, I'm so fucking glad I finally picked these games up, and while I think City is a huge improvement over Asylum, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a great time playing Arkham Asylum. As far as the story for this game goes, I've read the comic multiple times over the years, so I was curious to see how they'd go about adapting it, and I was mildly disappointed that this is more of a loose adaptation, but the game was written by the almighty Paul Dini. And if you don't know, Paul Dini is the co-creator of the character Harley Quinn and was one of the main writers on Batman the Animated Series. And I'm sure someone throughout the years had mentioned that he wrote this game to me, but I'd completely forgotten, and as soon as I saw his name in the opening credits, I knew I was in great hands. And this game also uses Kevin Conroy to voice Batman and Mark Hamill to voice the Joker, so it's a good time for someone that loves Batman the Animated Series, which I am. The story with the Titan virus I thought was really fun, and like I said earlier, the detective mode really just makes the gameplay fun when you can completely change the world in front of you whenever you want to and look for things that you might be missing. And obviously people like this as a feature in their gameplay because it seems like a lot of games use this as a function in their gameplay now. But the Scarecrow sections in this game I thought were really fun and were the closest I felt to reading the original comic. Anyway, I give Arkham Asylum a 4.2 out of 5. Number 3, Arkham City. That's right, back-to-back Arkham games. I told you, I love Batman. So like I mentioned earlier, I thought that Arkham City was a huge improvement over Arkham Asylum, and I loved Arkham Asylum, so that should let you know how much I enjoyed this game. The story is fine or whatever. Unfortunately, I had the twist at the end spoiled for me like 10 plus years ago, so I knew where it was heading the entire time, but I still really enjoyed myself playing this game, and I absolutely got swept up in the story as it went along. The thing I really enjoyed with this game was that it felt like they really dialed up the detective element from Asylum. In fact, when I finished Asylum, that was my main complaint I shared with my friend, and they all responded with, well then you will love Arkham City. And they were right, I did. I really enjoyed all of the boss battles in this one. I found them challenging without being so hard that I wanted to unalive myself, and every time I got to a new boss fight, I'd be excited to see what was going to happen and what the trick to beating this one was going to be. My favorite boss battle from this one was definitely Mr. Freeze. I really liked how challenging it was, again without feeling tedious and boring. I really liked that you could only use each stealth trick on Mr. Freeze once before he would catch on and disable that technique. It really made you have to think through all of your available tools, and honestly it was everything that a good boss battle should be. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I'll end up playing any of the other Arkham games. I tried playing Arkham Knight shortly after finishing City, and if I'm being completely honest, I fucking hated every second of it. And I'm sure you can all guess why. The fucking Batmobile. I don't like driving games. I'm actually really bad at them for whatever reason, so that was a big disappointment after loving Arkham City so much. But Arkham City was pretty goddamn perfect and fun. It felt like everything a good sequel should do. It improved nearly every function from the previous game while expanding the story in a way that makes sense for you to be able to explore all of Gotham. Arkham City gets a 4.5 out of 5. Number 2, Allan Wake. If you've watched any of my other videos, you may or may not have noticed that I have a tendency to bring up Twin Peaks. It's my favorite show of all time, so if you've played Allan Wake, it's probably no surprise that I fucking loved this game. This game just bridged so many of the things I love in genre storytelling. It was like someone threw Twin Peaks, a bunch of Stephen King books, and John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness into a blender and then morphed that into a video game. And those are like 3 of my favorite things ever, so I was in. It's just a lot of things I love rolled into one. Now, sure, this game is definitely a lot of walking around in the woods, and that can maybe get boring, I guess, if you're a dork. The story of this game really sucked me in, though. Like I mentioned earlier, it almost felt like I was watching a TV show. Every time I finished an episode, I had to at least start the next one to see what direction the story was going in. The gameplay for this one really took a backseat for me. Survival horror is fun and all, but the story is what really made this game pop for me. That's not to say I had a bad time playing it. Obviously, I had a great time. Ultimately, the ending for Allan Wake kind of underwhelmed me. It felt really abrupt and sudden, almost like the studio ran out of money. Now, I know that's not the case, and I know there was a sequel released not all that long ago, and I'm dying to play it, but sadly, Allan Wake 2 is not available on Switch, so I'll have to wait until I can upgrade my system. I just thought Allan Wake did a really great job riding the line between mystery and horror, and I loved picking up all the manuscript pages and looking for the coffee thermoses. I seriously was so disappointed when I found out there were like 50 thermoses I missed because I thought I had explored every inch of every episode. So I guess I'll have to play Allan Wake again at some point. This game rocks, 4.7 out of 5, only taking points off because the ending felt a bit underwhelming. And finally, my favorite game that I finished so far on my video game journey. Number 1, Final Fantasy X. Okay, this was the first game after buying the Switch that really sucked me in. And boy, did it suck me in. To date, I've put in well over 100 hours into this game across 2 different save files, which I know are absolutely baby numbers for someone that's been playing this game since it came out 24 years ago. But 100 hours in less than a year, I mean, not to brag, but I like rarely leave my house. So what did I love about Final Fantasy X?
To begin with, everything.
I mean, the very, very, very first thing that sucked me in with this game is that the battle system was exactly what I wanted it to be. Conditional turn-based combat. Okay, this might be sacrilegious to say, but it kind of felt like an improved version of the original Pokemon games for Game Boy. Seriously, there's no time limits, it's turn-based, and you can swap characters in and out during battle. Obviously, Final Fantasy X is not nearly as simple as that, but more or less I'm realizing as I'm writing this, that's probably why I instantly felt dialed into this game. It reminded me of playing Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow in the 4th grade. Those were the only ones I ever played, but I def sunk like 1,000 hours into those games over the years. Anyway, all of this to say that the battle system in Final Fantasy X being conditional turn-based really scratched a specific itch in my brain while I played through it. I liked being able to see the effects my current move would have on the turn order moving forward. I loved swapping in different characters to make sure that they all earned ability points for every battle I did, making sure that anytime I went into a boss battle, I had everyone's limit breaks reached and ready to go. I even enjoyed just grinding levels out and experimenting with all of my characters' different abilities. I really loved the story of this game as well. Now, it sounds bonkers. It's about a time-traveling water polo player who's recruited to save the world from the evil monster known as Sin. But it's so well written for the most part. Sure, it's got some cringy moments throughout, and Titus, quick side note, I know there's some debate on if this little fucker's name is pronounced Titus or Titus. Titus sounds dumb to me, so I'm going with Titus. Suck it, nerds. Anyway, Titus is one of the most obnoxious protagonists of all time. All he does is whine and complain and say weird shit to everyone around him, because every 5 seconds he seems to forget that he's time traveled 1,000 years into the future. But he's that kind of obnoxious that only a protagonist that's in a well-written story can be. He drives you nuts, but the story is pretty fucking compelling all the same. Then you've got my boy, Sir Auron, the coolest character in the game hands down. As someone who aspires to live the sunglasses on at all times life, I think his character design is easily the best in the game. Plus, he's got some of the best moves in the game. I loved using his limit break abilities every chance I could, and the button combos for his limit breaks were also really fun to memorize, and I felt like such a badass every time I nailed the combo perfectly first try. Yuna is the co-lead of the story. We're following along her adventure realistically. The idea is that Yuna is a summoner and there are several summoners in the world of Spira, and they're all trying to defeat Sin by going on this journey across Spira. Yuna's a solid character. I like how she jumps off a building to avoid marrying this fucker, and I loved being able to summon the Aeons with her. Gonna speed through the rest because I don't have much to say about them. Wakka is fine. I honestly barely used him aside from keeping him at the same level as everyone else in my party. Lulu's a badass, Rico is there, and Kamari reminds me of Battle Beast from Invincible, so he's cool too. Like I said, I really loved this game from start to finish. I just had the best time with it. I even stayed up until 2 a.m. to beat it the night I finally finished it, and that is a time I do not stay up until, ever. I hate staying up late. Final Fantasy X gets a perfect 5 out of 5 from me. No notes. Anyway, I'm currently playing through The Witcher 3 and I'm nowhere near finishing it, but it's definitely tied with Final Fantasy X as my favorite game I've played so far. Let me know if you guys think I should do a full review on it once I finish it, or if I should do a full-blown review on how much I love Final Fantasy X, because honestly, I could talk about it for a full video, for fucking sure. So that's been my experience getting into gaming as a grown-ass man in his 30s. What other games do I need to play? Should I do a series where I review classic games? Let me know in the comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you made it this far into the video, thank you, you're amazing. Okay, bye-bye.